It makes me think about like some of the psychology behind this. Maybe this is a good segue is like social exchange theory and the idea that friendships are kind of maintained, or relationships even in general are maintained based on kind of a cost benefit analysis. Like people weigh the rewards of the relationship, someone being supportive or like being a companion, against like the cost of it. So like the time or the effort that you put into it, the emotional, exchange that happens. And people tend to like seek relationships, or in this case, friendships, based off of the fact that the benefits would outweigh the costs. And so this is sort of connected, I think, to like the idea of reciprocity and like the norm of reciprocity that people kind of expect in relationships and expect in friendships for them to like reciprocate. It doesn't have to be like a tit for tat. But I think overall, like the general feeling is that the person gives and they also receive. Yeah. And I do think that when that is off balance, it may impact, someone's ability to either develop a friendship or just maintain a friendship. And you can kind of like come into some trouble when people start to feel like the social exchange is off, like it's not really reciprocal in the ways that you need.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, the social exchange theory helps maybe rationalize it to some extent, because when you do explain it in a way of like reciprocity and like this give and take, sometimes it can be misconstrued as like, I don't know, a selfishness or like you always want to receive something. But social exchange theory can really back that up of like, there is this analysis we mentally go through of like, hey, what's the cost and benefit? It seems like I'm costing. And it's not just tangible thing it's costing. Like it can cost you, emotional, like it's draining. It's costing a lot of my time, and I don't see them giving that same time to me. And so things like that, it makes a difference.
And I think another thing to add is like the idea of like equity. And I think people are generally kind of drawn to fairness in relationships and in friendships. So part of that sort of cost benefit analysis is also like you're kind of evaluating, like, is this fair?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a difficult one. I'll tread lightly.
Okay.
But
you scared me.
Well, it's interesting because maybe I'm marketing for therapists, but it's like, of course, if any of my friends need anything, I'm there, not just because I'm a therapist, but like a friend should be support. You can vent to them. You can tell them like your vulnerabilities, painful things you're going through. That is absolutely what you would want a friend to be. Most of us would want that. There's this level it skips though, right? When people start tapping too much into it, where it's like someone just constantly calling you and dumping all this stuff, that can get draining for an individual. And so, but sometimes it's this expectation of like, well, my friend should be there for anything I call them for and anything I need. Yes, and so again, these two things can be true. Like they can be a really good and supportive friend and be there for you to talk and chat. And also sometimes it can be a lot emotionally for individuals, especially when you keep coming to them with the same thing over and over and over. Yeah. And there's no like shifts or changes, right? So it's like at some point you might need additional
support, like in therapy. Yeah. And I think that sometimes that's where you might see where there might be some mental sort of health things that kind of affect people, not like in a negative or bad way, but just like you might like maybe someone is going through something and they're needing more mental emotional support in the form of therapy, and maybe what might be coming out is a leaning on a friend in a way that extends beyond what their capacity is, And, it makes me think about just what you were talking about a while ago about like just expectations in friendships. And I think that sometimes like when it comes to making friends, there needs to be some sort of shared understanding or expectation around like what a friendship actually looks like.
Yeah, definitely.
And that may also be affecting someone's ability to make friends if their expectations or thoughts about what a friendship looks like, or maybe even how easy it might be or how difficult it might be to make friends. Like that may be a part of the process.
Yeah.
Maybe even fear. I think sometimes like fear and anxiety can kind of impact our ability to get out there and make friends as adults. And I think it's something that we should be like really attentive to, and to have some compassion for ourselves and for other people, and know that like we can move past that, and we can make new friends, and you don't need 1,000 friends or dozens and dozens of friends to have good relationships. You just need the subset of friends that connect with and that you can kind of relate to. And that may be a small number, maybe a large number. It depends on the person.
Yeah, you just want the quality.
The quality is important. And the being able to differentiate, I think, who your friends is, or maybe like the type of friends or the depth or level of friendships. Because you know how like you have like your best friends. You might have like, what I call like my soul sister, and I have good friends, and then I have friends, and then acquaintances. Yeah. And I do think that sometimes people may have these distinctions, like I have those distinctions for myself naturally, and it has worked for me. But not everyone may have that, or some people may sort of, they may be different. And so that may also be a part of what affects someone's ability to make a friend or maintain one.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, like, because there is this true psychology behind friendships that's not discussed, probably in a lot of studies on it, but not as much as the dating and like intimate relationships, right? And maybe that's what makes it more difficult too, because even as you were speaking about like things that you want to look for in a friendship, and I had the thought of like, it literally is just looking for those things over time. More times than not, we don't treat our friendships like we do a date, where you're asking all these questions at first about where are you from, your personality, what's your goals for the future. Like, that's not really a friendship talk. It could be, but that's more of like the dating realm. So for friendships, it's just like, okay, we vibe for now. We'll just hang out and see if it continues to mesh, right? But there's not that conversation of, well, what are your expectations for a friendship? Right? So it's like, should we start having that conversation? Maybe it's a little strange. But maybe that could help us make the right group of friends and maintain friends, knowing like what we're working with a little earlier on. But I think that makes the friendship aspect a little more difficult, because we actually don't pay attention to what's beneath all this. And the same things that still impact us in like intimate relationships. I don't think friendships are that immune. Like we've talked about attachment styles before, like that can still seep into some of our friendships, and some of our mental health struggles and past experiences that can still seep into friendships also. And just, we all know group dynamics in psychology is a huge thing, but some of that you still see in friendships too. So it's just, I think the hardest thing is friendships aren't just this like magical, easy thing all of a sudden. It takes like some time, intention, and just being lucky, meeting like the right group of people that can fit you.
Yeah. I think for me, I really think about it as being intentional about like wanting to make a friend. It's interesting because like when you're talking about like the different kind of questions that you ask, like a date versus a friend, I was thinking like there does seem to be sort of like an unspoken way that we kind of make friends or develop a friendship. And it feels like it's not intuitive, but it's like I think we're like observing, or like, like we're in the process and we're hanging out and we're kind of observing what people do or say, and does it feel good, and do we like the same things, and does it work? And then like experiencing it like in the moment in ways that aren't always as like verbal as like dating someone. So like experiencing like, are they there for me? Like, can I call them? Do they answer the phone? Do they respond? Can I tell them something? And like, what will they say back to me? Does it feel good? Is it supportive? And I don't know that that's like a bad thing per se. I think that perhaps it does though it does require then, if it's not verbalized and just outright spoken, it does require like a level of like attentiveness and like understanding that may not always be hyper conscious. You know what I mean? Like if I take my friendship with you, like I don't know that I didn't even know you played basketball in college, but I know that like when we met, your demeanor, you know what I mean? Like you were smiling, we were having fun the same way. I was like, oh, okay, this is my kind of person, right? And then we start talking and we maybe share something with each other, and it's like, oh, okay, well, she kept that to herself, you know what I mean? So we we can keep going, and you know, we might hang out and have different conversations, and maybe you might share something with me and I'll share something with you that's a little bit more personal that I didn't share with, you know, the rest of the group. And so over time it just kind of felt like there's this, like, you know, give and take, and it feels safe.
Very gradual too.
But that does feel different though, from like if we were dating, girl, I'm gonna ask you all kinds of questions. You know, I'm in your grill.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me think too, like, because sometimes it's important for us to have these similarities with our friends. But I think, and this might contribute to the difficulties with maintaining friendships, is we do change and evolve, at least we hope to change and evolve. And sometimes our values start to shift too. And so as everyone comes into their sense of self and who they are and figuring out what they agree with, what they don't agree with, I think just the values aspect can get in the way of a lot of friendships too.
Has that ever happened to you where like something really important?
Yeah, a whole other conversation, but I vividly, and it wasn't really like super close people, but more so like acquaintances where it's like, oh, I still spend some time with you. But 2020 during COVID, but when like the George Floyd stuff happened, I mean, the whole society just showed their head really. So that was a very overwhelming time for a lot of us, but that brought out so much stuff, not just societally, but relationally too, where now I'm seeing people's true colors in a sense, or I'm like, oh, I didn't know you had that belief. Trying to be up in my face, smiling. So, and that's where this resonated with me of people can like you, but I want to surround myself with people that actually value me too. And when you value someone, it's like, the whole essence of who they are and their identity and how their identity is impacted by experiences and stuff. But during that time, it was like, whoa. So it's like, this is good. Let's make some changes, even if it's acquaintances, though, right? But it's like, we know who not to spend and give energy and time to. And so, and a lot of that stuff you're still seeing to this day with the election and all that being so polarized. So a lot of that is tearing friendships apart and families. So,
and families too, right?
Yeah.
You know, it makes me think about the idea of like social identity and how like our friendships kind of contribute to our self-concept and kind of like just group identity. And they can friendships can like reinforce our sense of belonging to like a particular group, or even influence our self-esteem. And I wonder if a part of like that is relevant as we think about like the social political landscape. It's weird because like it feels like, you know, more recently this has been a huge thing, but it probably was something in the past and maybe I was just in ignorant bliss or something. But it does feel like, you know, since probably about 2020, maybe a little bit before that, with some of the other things that were going on, that, you know, people's political and social beliefs have maybe like surprised people, or like, you know, friendships kind of like looking like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, this person in my family or this person that's my friend, like maybe kind of it has people thinking, you know, differently or wondering. And I wonder if a part of that is like, because like that identity piece, like if I'm friends with this person, then what does that maybe say about me? Or do they reinforce my beliefs about myself or my self-concepts or this group that I'm a part of and who I think I am or who I feel that I am?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess maybe wrapping up some of the psychology aspects. So there's a lot we can discuss. And it's funny because, you know, our topics like why are friendships so important? And a lot of what we're discussing is what makes them so difficult. So,
this was not the aim.
Yeah, but we're trying to give you two sides of the coin of, you know, they are important and we recognize the difficulty in maintaining it. But one thing, and I'll never forget the study, it was a Stanford study, and then maybe you have some final thoughts on the importance with psychology. But it was a Stanford study on just like what are some of the strongest predictors for people's longevity and just living long, right? And so one of the strongest predictors for people's longevity is what we're discussing, strong relationships, right? And so it just emphasizes the importance of it. Just difficult when we have all these things we've outlined of like why it becomes so difficult. But hopefully knowing how important it is, where it truly correlates to our longevity, helps it be worth the risk of trying to tap into where can we find some people, community, our group.
Yeah, I think that's super important to highlight. And I believe very much in the power of friendships and how important they are. Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff that I found was just like kind of like, what's the function of a friendship? Like, why would we do it? And one thing is just like thinking about emotional support, and that when you're in times of crisis or stress, like your friends are usually people that you go to for comfort, maybe even for like actual support. You know, they may do things, they may come over, they may help provide that self-soothing or that soothing. They may support you in a mental health challenge, in all kinds of things. And so they do provide a very important function for you. They also, I think, are fun. You know, like you laugh, you have a good time, you go experience life with your friends, you go do girls' trips. I love a girls' trip. It's one of my favorite kinds of trips. I've traveled so many places with my friends, and I think that that is a really important part of our mental and physical health. And I think friendships obviously contribute to that. I also think about, you know, during 2020, it was also called like the loneliness pandemic, that there was like two pandemics going on. And I don't know where the numbers are now, but I do feel like, and, you know, I've seen some stats over the years that we're kind of like a lonely society, despite being so socially connected via technology. We're so lonely and disconnected. And so I think that friendships are super important to navigating and battling like the loneliness epidemic, but not just like any like friendship, like, oh, that's my friend, you know, but like actual connecting with your friend, talking to them, hanging out with them, spending time with them, and being intimate, not like, but I mean like being emotionally intimate with your friends. Because I think that is what I think addresses loneliness, because you can also have a lot of friends and still feel lonely.
Absolutely.
And so I think that you got to share things emotionally with your friends and be real with your friends, and all kind of, you know, like the well-rounded experience with your friends.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, loneliness is huge, right? Still maybe not discussed enough since the pandemic. Like, I guess they just think it magically went away because we're out traveling and being social again, but there's still this underlying essence of loneliness in our society. And it's just masked by all the social time people do and social media and all that. But yeah, loneliness is still huge. And I know I probably like every other episode, maybe every episode, I'm like stating this, but everything boils down, most things boil down to this sense of belonging and how that's this strong need and desire. And I think ultimately that's what our friendships and communities can provide us. Again, it's just finding the right ones, but that's the importance of that. And you can start to see the connection of some of this, of like that sense of belonging being a huge need. Okay, it's no wonder why that's one of the strongest predictors of longevity, right? Once we feel one of those important needs are being fulfilled, it's going to heighten a lot of positive emotions for us. It's going to enhance our mental health and well-being.
And our behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah. And so all these things are connected. So that sense of belonging. And so I guess kind of going into the authenticity aspect of it, it's this question of how do we find, which is hard to answer, but how do we find these authentic connections, friendships, and I guess even if it's just like a community.
I think like being authentic, like with yourself, you know what I'm saying? And like we talked about like in the beginning, like the different ways that me and you might make friends. I think some of them are actually very similar and some of them may be a little bit different, but I would say like, what do you naturally enjoy doing? Like, how are you naturally? And kind of like maybe go do those things. Because I do think like proximity and like affiliation help with developing friendships. And so, you know, if you enjoy playing basketball, you know, like go join a basketball or whatever, or like go to a game or something like that. I don't know. But do things related to that. And maybe you'll be able to meet other people who enjoy that. And maybe that's a natural kind of or more natural way for you, or an easier way to like, you know, start talking to someone and like, oh, like we kind of like get along. We kind of like some of the same things. And like maybe we can be friends.
Yeah. I think the community aspect is important because, and I use community and friendship a little differently, just because finding a community doesn't always have to mean you found like these lifelong friends, right? It's just maybe this community of people that you engage in some really great social time during that time, and maybe a little scattered hangout in between, but you know, that community you can like rely on. But the community, like you said, it most likely will be rooted in something that's authentically connected to yourself. If it's a passion, a hobby or something, but you know, you have this genuine interest in that. And so that automatically aligns you with some people that also authentically connect to that commonality also. And so that can start to build some of that authentic relationship, but maybe it's just within that community, and that's okay, right? But within that community, you're not feeling like you have to pretend like you like something because someone else does, or feel like I won't tell them I like this because maybe they'll throw them off. They won't want to be friends. So in that community, hopefully you can truly just show up as yourself.
And I also think like as you're making friends, like it's important to be your authentic self, because it's really hard to like keep and continue a friendship if it's made based on who you are not. You know, it's hard to kind of show up every day and like be in a friend group or be with a friend and like, this is not really who I am. I'm just kind of like being this person.
Yeah, definitely. And if we look at this from another angle real fast, so if you were to reflect on your current group of friends, maybe people you spend the most time with, you really have to ask yourself, am I able to truly be my authentic self with this group? And you would think the answer is yes, but for a lot of us, the answer is actually no. It's just maybe some people that you spend time with because it's just people that you've met, but you're truly not being able to be your full self. That's not an authentic relationship, one, and now you're hindering your own authenticity while you're around those people. So I think we have to start reflecting on how authentic in nature some of our relationships actually are. Kind of like you alluded to, it's not really about this quantity, more so the quality. And the quality we want it to be, we're authentically connected. We might not have tons of similarities. We might not agree on everything, but I can show up as my true self with you. And that in itself is special for a friendship.
Yeah. And I love that, like grounding in like, can you show up as your true self and be authentic? Because I think that it transcends like having to agree on everything. You're never going to agree. And I'm almost never, because that's a therapist. On everything with every single person or with your friend, and that is literally okay, but can you state it? You know, is it acceptable? You know what I mean? Can you be yourself? And if you can be yourself in this space and it's acceptable and you feel accepted and they accept you, that might be a really good start for a friendship, a really good place, fertile ground.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for tapping in to All Things Authentic. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. For full episodes, find All Things Authentic on your favorite podcast listening platform.